Welcome to the Health Angle Podcast with Dr. Mike Headlee and Dr. Gordon Fimreite, where we'll be exploring different angles of health to achieve the best version of yourself. Now here's your hosts, Dr. Mike and Dr. Gordon.
I am Dr. Mike Headlee, and with me is Dr. Gordon Fimreite. Welcome.
Thanks, and welcome to the Health Angle. We have some exciting news. We are actually on Spotify, so if you want to listen to the audio, people can download, listen to it on your commute. We're also, of course, here on YouTube as well. We got a couple of social media channels, Twitter, LinkedIn, as well as Facebook. So please check us out, and welcome to the show.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about every angle of your health. And today we're going to talk about stress management. And Dr. Gordy, as a doctor of chiropractic for 30 years, I've never seen in the last couple of years more people come in and really admit that they're stressed.
Stress is a big thing. I mean, I can see why they call it the silent killer, because it's something that sneaks up. A lot of people have these constant stress factors. They're always there, but they just can't identify them, or they're kind of idling in the background until they start getting these symptoms. And even then, they don't know what a big factor stress is.
Absolutely. So I want everyone to picture a toolbox. Most people can picture a toolbox, whether it's metal or plastic or from Home Depot or wherever. And so we're going to give you some tools to put in your stress management toolbox. And we're going to give you a lot of things, and you don't have to do all of them. And if you're already doing some of them, really dive into them and perfect them and master them and use them. So with that said, there's a three-step process when I talk to people about stress, Dr. Gordy. I talk about awareness first. I said we need to be aware of our triggers of stress. With better awareness of our triggers, we can make better choices. Are we stress eating? Oh, shoot, I'm stressed. Oh, instead of eating, let's try some of these other tools that we're going to talk about. So better awareness can lead to better choices, and then we'll have better results. And so we want to intervene instead of doing the destructive stuff. I believe that's why a lot of people are vaping and smoking and marijuana and over drinking, is they're self-medicating for stress.
Yeah, I think people are overdoing it, and they're compensating the wrong ways. And I think there is a concept, we can talk about this later, of deprogramming those stresses. But it's interesting, we have patients that come in and they're under stress, and they'll come in with some flare up of their back or neck. And you start asking them questions like, when did it start? How did it start? And right when they say, I don't know how it started, my next question is, how is your stress levels? And boom, that just opens the door and everything comes out. Stress is a big, big thing. There's the guy is referred to as the founder of stress theory, and his name is Hans Selye. Now, he has passed away, but this guy has written more books on stress. He's got like 15 that were written, and some of his quotes are so good and so poignant. And I want to go through a couple. No one can live without experiencing some degree of stress all the time. It's not even necessarily bad for you. It is also the spice of life. For any emotion, any activity causes some degree of stress. But of course, your system must be prepared to take it. The same stress which makes one person sick can be an invigorating experience for another. So that's pretty powerful. That says a lot. So we need some stress in our life. We've all experienced it before, an athletic event, or you got to do a public speaking event. So we have some stress, and that keeps us going. We think about it, of course, and we want to do the best we can. And that's the good thing. That's what stress is kind of good for in that department. But when it gets carried away, that's when you don't want it. Like, here's this other quote. When individuals are exposed to a stressor, they are at first taken off guard, then attempt to maintain homeostasis, which is balance, by resisting the change, and eventually fall victim to exhaustion in countering the stressors. That just summarizes what stress is.
Yeah, he's the grandfather of stress. That's great stuff, Gordy.
I want to just talk really quick about the mechanism, the physiological mechanism of stress. And I think that'll tell us a lot. A lot of our viewers will kind of get more of a clearer picture. And of course, we've all heard these concepts before, you and I, Dr. Mike, but maybe it's new to somebody. But let's say you're out for a walk in the wilderness and you have some wild animal that comes out of nowhere, and you have an automatic flight or fight mechanism, which means you're either going to get out of there, you're going to flight, or you're going to fight them. And right when that happens, your nervous system kicks in instantaneous. Cortisone, adrenaline, you got catecholamines, all these stress hormones are happening all at once. And what they do is they have an effect on the body. The first thing it does is it increases your heart function. It increases your blood pressure. It increases your pulse. It increases your cholesterol. It increases your blood sugar. And what's really happening is your body is getting prepped for either that fight or that flight. And it's getting muscles prepared any way possible. And the next thing happens is your sensory systems, they're on heightened awareness. Your pupils dilate. The other thing that happens is mechanisms decrease. So what decreases is like blood to the organs. You don't need your organs right now. Don't need blood there. You need them in the muscles. Digestive. How many people have digestive problems because of stress? That decreases. Kidney function decreases. Sexual function and growth hormones both decrease during this flight or fight mechanism. Your immune system also decreases. A lot of people are susceptible to colds and flus. So that's the mechanism if a vicious animal comes attack you. But what happens if you have sustained stress over time? At the work, you have deadlines, you have a conflict with a coworker, or home, you're having a fight with a family member or a friend. These are slow stressors that can happen over time, depending on how you handle it. So if it's sustained, you have increased anxiety, depression, you have altered hormones balance and glandular activity, your electrolyte balance gets off the mark, brain chemistry, bone loss, muscle fiber changes. And the sad thing is, that's a normal physiological response to stress, which heightens the awareness that we do indeed need to be proactive. And what can it lead to? System failure, depletion of nutrients, your immune system continuing to be depressed, basically leads to aging, more symptoms, and ultimately disease. And some people might say, well, what's some other symptoms? Maybe I don't have that to degree. Maybe I just have some small symptoms. And here's some symptoms just to be aware of. You might feel impatient or irritable, maybe a little bit wound up, overwhelmed, if not, just kind of anxious and nervous. Your thoughts are racing. You just can't switch it off. You're unable to enjoy yourself. You're uninterested in a lot of aspects of life. And you kind of lose that sense of humor. So those are just some subtleties in what you might feel.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. Our body is built to handle stress, Dr. Gordon, just not sustained, unrelenting, unadaptive stress. And I see athletes, you see athletes in practice, and that's some of the most stressful situations. If you're taking a free throw and you're throwing a pass, or you're doing a wrestling match and it comes down to the last few seconds, I mean, that's high adrenaline, that's high stress situation. But if they come down after it and breathe and relax and take a cold shower and, do the recovery protocol, and they can sleep at night, not a big deal. They enjoy the competition and the stress because they're focused and honed in. And you said a lot of subtle things that can be a symptom of unresolved stress, but sleep. If people aren't sleeping, we really have to address the underlying stress, because sleep is a drive, just like eating and sex and other drives. If it's unresolved stress, leads to really poor sleep, and that leads to chronic inflammation and all the cascade of other things. So I couldn't agree more with what you said.
It's interesting. We're in a happy country in the most part, supposedly, maybe post-pandemic, and the pandemic kind of threw us off. Definitely. We can talk about that. But you look at the statistics in America, and I'm really quite surprised. Stress levels are levels that are 20% point higher versus the global average. So that's quite significant. So a lot of people in this country, somehow, some way, are not. Maybe they're not living to the expectation they'd like to. Maybe there's other, social media aspects too that play a role in that. But 55% of Americans report feeling stressed during the day. That's over half our population. That comes from the American Institute of Health. And then 83% of Americans reported experiencing stress that can have an effect on their personal relationships. So basically 76% indicated that the workplace stress negatively impacted their personal relationships. And then, of course, economic stress, and then, the world issues and the global uncertainty and the geopolitical tension, all these things can play a role on stress. But going right back, it's how you handle it, how you interpret it, what you let in and what you don't let in. And these are big factors. With social media, just about everybody's on it. So you're always getting news. You're always getting your head filled with stuff. Local news, your head is just filled of this stuff all the time. And it's not positive stuff. So it's just mostly negative, and it's basically comes down to how you handle it.
Absolutely. How we adapt to the everyday stresses of life, small or large. We all have stress. I've had some instructors teach me, Dr. Gordon, about, they say there's only one disease, and it's called stress, but it comes in multiple flavors: physical, chemical, emotional. We've talked about in the past about electromagnetic field stress. So basically, we're talking about the emotional stress component today, because we'll talk about exercise and fitness and chemical stress and toxins. We've talked about those in the past, and we'll talk about that in the future. But the emotional stress, how do we handle the emotional stress? And that's where the toolbox comes in. How do we handle this fight or flight, this sympathetic dominant overdrive, where we're tired and exhausted? We lay down in bed. We can't wait to lay in bed. And then all of a sudden, click, our mind goes, oh, geez, what am I doing tomorrow? I got a deadline to meet tomorrow. I got to write a paper. Oh, I got to walk the dog before I go to work. And then I got to pick so-and-so up after work. And, oh, shoot, I got to make 2 more phone calls. And, oh, it's so-and-so's birthday. And all that, it just keeps grinding and grinding. And you're exhausted, and you just can't shut off that hamster wheel and that sympathetic fight or flight, like a dog is trying to chase you in bed, and you're exhausted, and it just exhausts our system.
Yeah. It's interesting. Stress is either perceived or is it real? I mean, that's kind of a question. Is it a perceived stress or is it real stress? And stress is always about something into the future or something that had already happened. If you catch somebody right here at this moment and you go, right now at this exact moment, are you really stressed? Are you really stressed? And most of the time people say, no, at this moment, no. And so again, reframing, reprogramming, getting solutions that we'll talk about here in just a moment, trying to get your mindset in the right place. 95% of problems that people worry about end up just coming through just fine anyway. Rarely do problems end up manifesting. It seems like your brain always goes to the place where it perceives the problem as worse than it really is. And I know this with patients that come in, they always, like, especially if I got somebody new, they've never been to my practice, their mind goes to the worst places. Is my back problem due to cancer? They don't ask me that, but you can see it in their dispositions, and you can see their faces and how they're representing themselves. And you can tell that they're full of stress, thinking that, whoa, this thing is really bad. So yeah, is it perceived? And can we manage that perception? And if so, how much?
Exactly. I got a headache. I think it's a brain tumor. No. Okay, let's just calm down. Let's be present. Let's just talk about it. I didn't sleep good last night. I'm dehydrated. I'm under a lot of stress and pressure. I haven't eaten all day. Oh, okay. Let's not go to the brain tumor thing just yet.
No doubt. I'm ready for some solutions.
Yeah, let's get the toolkit filled up. I
Love it.
believe 80 to 90% of our time should be in the parasympathetic rest and digest relaxation mode and not fight or flight mode. Because if we're only in fight or flight, you already went through all the physiologic effects and what that leads to. So if we have a deadline, we need to read, we need to drive, we need to be on a conference call, we need to be cool and calm and collected in the parasympathetic, and the tools we're going to give you will get you out of that fight or flight back into the resting, calming, present state. And so my number one tool to fill up your toolbox is meditation. Meditation, you already said it, Dr. Gordy, is it brings you present because you focus on your breath. There's hundreds of types of meditation, so it's not a one size fits all. I'll give you my 3 favorite meditations, but every article you look up, the science says it helps people reduce stress. Every article that you look up on meditation, the number one thing they focus on, it reduces stress. It does a lot of other things, improves memory and our willpower, better sleep, less pain, less blood pressure. It has a wide range of benefits, but it helps us adapt and reduce stress. So my top 3, and then I'll let you go with another tool, is something called Bliss Brain meditation found on YouTube. There's something called the 6-phase meditation found on YouTube. And then what I'm currently doing now is Dr. Joe Dispenza's morning and evening meditations. They're 35 minutes each. You can find that, a sample of that, on his website or on YouTube as well. And there's so many apps out there. The Calm app, you can do a 2-minute meditation, a 5-minute, a 10-minute. You can do spiritual meditations and mantra meditations. You do natural meditations. Dr. Dispenza has a free walking meditation that's fabulous that I've done. So that's my number one tool, Dr. Gordon, is meditation.
That's great. That's a great. Let me add a couple for your toolbox.
Okay.
One of the problems, especially I see this in Chicago, in Chicago, you got traffic, you got commuting and trains, and there's a lot of distractions and a lot of stress. So time is really important. So the question is time managing you, or are you managing time? So if you're spending 80% of your time doing 20% of your tasks, and then you need to do some priority. You need to write out a task list or a to-do list. You need to schedule your day. And I think that time management is going to be really important for a lot of people, making sure that you're just scheduling what you need to. And then if you're always checking your emails or the news every 4 or 5 hours, not a good idea. Pick one time during the day. I'm going to check my emails this time, and by this time, I'm going to check the news real quick, and I'll let it go for the next day, unless there's urgency. Obviously, if you're work and you're needing to check your emails constantly, that's another story. And I always remember this, Dr. Mike, you probably remember this too, the students. You always think that the best students are the smartest, best grades are the most brilliant. My conclusion after the years that I've been to school, the best students are the ones that are the best organized. In other words, they're not cluttering their head with all this stuff they have to do. They're organizing it, getting it to a systematic level where they don't have to think about it. They go through their routine of that organization, and they are able to get to it with more efficiency, and they can just put concentrated efficiency without all the extra added stress. And then for me personally, Dr. Mike, I get stressed too. Meditation, brilliant. I love that too. One of the things that I really love to do, and I just said this at the beginning of the podcast, that sometimes when you're distressed, it doesn't matter how much you exercise, and it doesn't matter what kind of foods you eat. Sometimes stress is just going to take over. That's the severity of really bad stress. But for me, when there's levels that are manageable, I like to get out there and do exercise. I like to get the blood flowing, the lymphatic flowing, get my body motioning and moving. And I like to get to the gym. You see other people. There's just something very calming and healthy about that. The other thing is just making sure that your diet, your foods that you consume, and your vitamin intake is the best possible that it can be for that time. Because every time you exercise, you get the blood flowing, you want the best nutrients going everywhere. And so that's one of the biggest things that I do, those two things for stress. But also, if I have circumstance where I just can't get it out of my head, it's just like this vicious cycle. It's always coming back to my head. I put the scenario or scenarios, if it's more than one stress factor, and I write it on a paper, and I write the pros and the cons. In other words, what are the solutions? What are my pros for that solution to that problem? And what are my cons? And then I'll go to the next and write it out. And what I find is when I write it out, it's off my mind. I don't have to think about it. I can come back to that later and just write down more information and refine it. And then pretty soon I get to a resolution. And I'm just talking like a circumstantial stress. I get it. People are at work. They have deadlines. They have real bad problems with a fight with a colleague or something like that. I get it. Those are other stress factors. But then again, I think exercise, diet, stress management, time management, as well as just making the pros and con list. So I got more to add, but I want to hear some from you, Mike.
Yeah, I like those, Dr. Gordon. When we're building up all of the epinephrine and the cortisol and all the negative chemicals, burning it off with some form of exercise, putting good, clean food in there. I know you're a smoothie guy. Instead of more chemicals and toxins and inflammatory caffeine and sugar and processed stuff, that just makes total sense to fuel the body good, the mind good. Another really, really good strategy to put in your toolbox is something called emotional freedom technique, EFT or tapping. There's a study on EFT. It led to a significant decrease in levels of the stress hormone cortisol, which mirrored an improvement in psychological distress. And we don't have enough time to go over EFT, but again, on YouTube, type in EFT or tapping for stress relief. There's 10 points that you tap on. They're acupressure points. They're acupuncture points, but we're doing acupressure. And then you can do an affirmation, and in 2 to 5 minutes you can do a YouTube video and you can rate your stress. I'm really stressed. I want to eat 2 gallons of ice cream and punch the wall. I'm on a scale of 0 to 10, I'm a 9. Well, then you can do 2 minutes of tapping and reassess. Take a deep breath and reassess. Wow, okay, I don't want to punch the wall anymore. I still want the ice cream, but I'm at a 7. So let's do another round of tapping. And then it's like, wow, it's a 5. It's not perfect, but it's a 5. Now I put the ice cream down, and now I feel calm enough to go on a walk and do some of these other tools. Emotional freedom technique or tapping, if you haven't looked into it, I would really highly, highly recommend putting that in your toolbox. You can learn it in 2 to 5 minutes on YouTube. Do the research on it. It's scientific. It's backed by science and acupuncture and psychology. And I love emotional freedom technique. A couple other ones. You mentioned writing down pros and cons list. I like journaling. I journal every night. I have a gratitude journal I do in the morning. In the evening, I write down 3 things I'm grateful for in the morning. In the evening, I write down 1 thing, but then I write a sentence. So I can look January 4th and look and see what I was grateful for and why. And so if I reflect on what I'm grateful for, it always calms my mind and makes me think more positively. Something called contemplative journaling or contemplative writing is if you're stressed and you just aren't dialing down to get to sleep, Dr. Gordon, you can take 30 seconds to 3 minutes and just write out what's on your mind. Geez, someone cut me off in traffic. This person yelled at me. I missed my lunch. I'm feeling bad because I ate too much ice cream. I punched the wall. Whatever I did, you just write it out. So-and-so forgot to call him. And it separates our thoughts from our mind. Then you don't read that up and save it, or you tear it up and throw it away. But it's a simple form of journaling called contemplative writing. And then also there's a lady who wrote the book called The Artist Way. She talks about morning pages. You get up and sit at your desk and you just start writing what's on your mind and get started, whether it's a to-do list or you just start emptying your mind right away. And it's a really good way to increase creativity and help your body get started in the right way mentally. So I love journaling. And there's so many types of positive journaling for stress. A couple other things real quick, and then I'll let you add some more, is Heart Math is a program where you put a heart rate variability monitor on your ear, and it's a breathing app. And so breath work brings you back to the present, like Dr. Gordon mentioned. And when we're in the present, guess what? We aren't thinking about yesterday. We aren't thinking about tomorrow. And it keeps us focused on our breath, and we get more oxygen to our brain. It calms us. It's part of meditation. But Heart Math has a really simple system to put coherence of our brain, our lungs, and our heart, and it reduces stress. It's amazing. It's really good. I've done that for years. Some other really fun things. This past weekend, me and my wife did a float tank. It's like 700 pounds of salt. And I turned off all sound and dark, and I just floated for an hour. If I could feel or visualize what it was like to be on a cloud, that was it. I couldn't sink if I wanted to. It was so emotionally releasing and relaxing and physically detoxing and healthy. So I love salt float tanks for stress reduction. And then I have a few more that I would like to go over, but take it away, Dr. Gordon.
Yeah, I remember taking this class that you took it as well, I believe, Mike. I think you introduced it to me. It was called The Science of Well-Being. It was an online course. And I remember one of the instructors was talking about just getting away from news and social media. These kids that are looking at all the social media are under so much stress. They're comparing themselves to other kids and getting bad news and just really bad stuff. So what he does personally, he's from Chicago. I believe he's a professor of psychology in a college that's south of the city. And when he commutes in to work, he leaves his cell phone, or I don't think he has a smartphone. He leaves his flip phone at home. He knows he's got a landline at work. He knows he's got a landline at home. And he's kind of reversing the clock a little bit. He's not participating in these new technology. But he says when he's on the train, instead, he'll do the old fashioned, actually talk to someone. And it gives him a lot of less stress. Let's just put it that way. He's less stress, not having to check his emails and what's coming in on the news cycles. He can just let that go, and he can just resonate with people on the train. I think it's important. I know stress, you have specific techniques which are phenomenal, Dr. Mike, but I think other things too, you can develop hobbies. I think the people that are under the most stress are ones that don't have other things to do. There should be a balance in life. Hobbies, enjoyable activities, work on your relationship. Maybe there's some personal growth that you'd like to do. Read some books on self-growth. I know some people have life coaches. That seems to really be the in thing. And they can spark you to get you going, get your life more balanced. So there isn't one area that's overstressing you. And then faith and fellowship, that's another area that people can work on. So just balance out your life. Setting goals on relaxation, calm, and peace. Deprogram yourself and get yourself away from these bad habits and just keep working on that. I have some supplements, Dr. Mike, I'll cover, but I'm going to have you continue to fill that chest full.
Absolutely. I had some herbs and stuff. I'll let you go. Laugh. I think we need to laugh every day. I really think we need to laugh every day. Whether you think you're stressed or not, let's focus on a laugh every day. So that's a really good reminder. Prayer, like you said, spiritual aspects, people just going to prayer groups or mass or synagogues and that community oriented, like-minded, faith-filled things like that is really here's something you might not know about me, Dr. Gordy, is I'm in a once a month drumming circle. I have a djembe drum. I'm not very good, but drumming and music, singing, whether you're good or not, in your car, karaoke or what have you, Drumming, though, is really, really stress relieving and really,
Wow.
really fun, but music as well. There's on YouTube, you can type in fractals for stress relief. They say just 10 seconds of looking at fractals, kind of like a kaleidoscope we all used to probably look at as kids. So watch a video of fractals, dials down that cortisol stress response very, very fast. And here's something to think about with stress. Think about your five senses. Okay, so what about taste? How about a nice chamomile lavender tea at night, or herbal tea that you can have that kind of calms things down? Some healthy dark chocolate, just a little bit of that will just kind of make you feel less stressed. Touch, get a massage. Use a massage gun, Epsom salt baths. You can get some knobby balls, some of those, I call them bed of nails you can lay on for the touch. What about smell? Flowers, nature. Now it's getting nice. Essential oils. I spray some lavender on my pillow in my bedroom. Essential oils are really, really good to dial down our stress response. How about sound? Really good stress relieving music out there, your favorite music, live music, being with other people, nature, ocean. The Calm app is a really popular one. How about sight? If you're at your desk, whether at work or at home, you can look out a window, you can look at a favorite picture, your spouse, friends, your pet. So sight, nature pictures, just use all of your senses to think of a holistic way to add to your toolbox to help reduce stress.
That's great, Mike. I would like to add chiropractic too. There's nothing like settling the nervous system and getting optimal potential from your nervous system through spinal adjustments from a good, reputable chiropractor.
Yes,
great stuff.
absolutely.
So there's a product, and of course, whenever I talk about vitamins and supplements, if you're taking medication or over the counter, you probably need to consult with your medical doctor, so there isn't any countering effects that could be negative towards you. First supplement is called Cortisol Manager, and basically it has two really important components. Number one is ashwagandha, and the second one is L-theanine. But those are two really big hitters for stress management. And of course, I remember you saying you take Calm before you go to bed. We talked about that in an earlier podcast. So if you haven't seen our sleep podcast, I would go back and check that out either on Spotify or YouTube. But magnesium also comes in that Calm. And that's another, just a naturally anti-anxiety type of supplement. And then there's pendants. You can get these stress releasing pendants like a Q-Link and other pendants, and they strengthen the biofields, strengthen your body's ability to fight biofields to support the stresses that are on our body. And then I was looking at Natural News just for some other ideas, and just a couple of more things here, like the diet. A lot of people load too much sugar, too much wheat, and then coffee. Look at all these coffee shops. Downtown Chicago is where I live. Every corner there's a coffee shop. So people are loaded with caffeine. And of course, this is going to stress your body internal mechanisms. So you're going to have high lows with stresses. Nutrients, we talked about some, but B complex is another to add, and as well as chromium. We need to balance our mental health with a nice essential fatty acid, and that helps with brain function as well. Essential oils, you had mentioned lavender. I have that on my list as well. Smelling these at work, at home, in the bath, that just calms the body and calms the mind. And then there's other herbs too, passion flower, lavender, valerian, as well as ashwagandha. And then exercise, meditation, you talked about that thoroughly. Yoga, another one. So those are pretty much my list, Mike. I know there's some books that they had recommended, and these might be a little old, but I think they're still prevalent. The Happiness Advantage, The Passion Test, and of course the classic The Secret. They made a movie out of that. Yeah. So all good stuff.
It is very, very good. I know we kind of rifled off a lot of things. So if you need to re-listen to this, and take some notes if you're driving or exercising or something like that, to really make a list. Even if there's 15 things, pick out the top 5 or so. Another herb, rhodiola, is an aptogenic herb. Chaga tea. I really like chaga tea for anti-inflammatory effects, but it's an adaptogen. It helps us adapt to stress, just like peppermint. If we're a little down, it kind of lifts you up. And if you're a little stressed, peppermint can calm the nervous system. And so I like the essential oils in that as well. So with only a minute and a half to go, Dr. Gordon, the thing I close on is, what idea did you hear us speak to you that you can share with your spouse and significant other or coworker at the water cooler tomorrow? When the topic of stress comes up, what are you going to share with them that you currently do, and a couple other things that you really want to improve? And then what's your action step? Did you hear a stress tool that you can add to your toolbox that you can look up EFT or different types of meditation, or look up some of these herbs and supplements and get back to the gym and do some of these? So what's your action step that you're going to take?
I think that's brilliant, Mike. Thank you. Appreciate everybody out there listening in. Our next week's subject is going to be a good one. We're going to talk about core strength, that core stabilization that helps the muscles of the trunk. They keep your spine and your body stable, and this keeps you balanced when you're moving. So I think core strength is going to be a great subject. Please subscribe to our channel. Please like our video. Please check us out on YouTube and Spotify. And I guess we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us on the Health Angle Podcast. Please subscribe to our channel and catch us for our next episode.